In today's video, we're taking a look at some updated NHL trade rumors and the possibility of Montreal actually being serious about acquiring winger Patrik Laine from Winnipeg, and taking a look at the overall situation with the Jets. They do have some moves that they likely are going to be making. We're also looking at some trade rumors around the Florida Panthers, as well as some free agent news around Ben Hutton, and we also have some follow-up on Sergei Bobrovsky and his exit from the Columbus Blue Jackets that you might find interesting. We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today, and I want to jump in with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, as we know, they're kind of down to a situation where they don't have a ton of salary cap space. They're going to have around $15 million to look after their two big-time restricted free agent forwards in Patrik Laine and Kyle Connor. Now, we saw them come to terms through arbitration with Andrew Kopp the other day, so that one's now settled, and they really just have these two big guys left. Cap friendly right now, it shows the Jets having over $17 million in space, but it also doesn't give them a full roster, so they'd have to bring up a couple of players from their non-active roster right now, which would bring them down to about $15 million to look after these two big-time players. We've heard off and on here about Patrik Laine, Montreal. Would they offer sheet him? Could they trade for him? There's been lots of talk and speculation, and I've seen some further updates here from Yvonne Pedno of TVA Sports, who indicates he doesn't really feel that the Montreal Canadiens are really all that serious right now about trying to acquire the Finnish winger from Winnipeg. He said he feels that he didn't think there was a whole lot to the rumors, and that if the Winnipeg Jets were even going to contemplate that the first ask would be Max Domi plus something else likely on top of that to kind of make it worthwhile for Winnipeg to even consider. But obviously Winnipeg's first and foremost priority here is definitely going to get Laine signed. Personally, could Montreal do another offer sheet? It's really debatable at this point. Their salary cap space has certainly been depleted after making other moves here throughout free agency. So I don't think they're going to go down that road again, but they could possibly pull off a trade if they had money going out, depending on what Laine's new salary is going to turn out to be. I can see that being a possibility, but according to TVA here, it's not really something that's seriously being considered right now, at least. So I just wanted to take a look at that, where we've seen the Laine rumors here off and on, but they do need to do something. Now, Nikolai Ehlers and Matthew Perreault are names that are still kicking around the rumor mill and could be players that the Winnipeg Jets could decide to move as well. And they will also have another buyout window now that their final arbitration case is done with Andrew Kopp. They do have another window here to do a buyout, and they could consider looking at defenseman Dmitry Kulikov or maybe Matthew Perreault if they can't find a trade for him. Although I think both of those players are likely not going to be going down that road. Dmitry Kulikov's case, they'd have to replace yet another defenseman after really gutting that blue line already this offseason. And even though they may not be totally in love with that contract right now, it's something that doesn't have a lot of term left on it. And really, I think they can probably get through the year with Kulikov on the roster. Hopefully he can stay healthy and contribute here. And in Matthew Perreault's case, I think they should be able to find a trade for him rather than going down the road of a buyout. So I don't think the buyout option is going to be necessary for Winnipeg, but they are going to have to move some salary to have some flexibility here. I mean, $15 million realistically should get Laine and Connor under contract, but it depends on what kind of other flexibility they might want to have here. They might be able to make some other moves and maybe look at improving that blue line. There's still some guys out there like Jake Gardiner and Ben Hutton, who we're going to talk about here momentarily, who they could consider bringing in on a short-term contract. Although it's debatable, they probably wouldn't be able to afford Gardner. Hutton might be a possibility on the other hand. But either way, the Winnipeg Jets likely are going to be making some deals. However, it doesn't look like Laine will be one of the ones leaving, at least not via trade, to Montreal, according to Pedno here of TVA Sports. Speaking of Ben Hutton, he is one of the top remaining free agents out there who is apparently garnering a lot of attention, according to Sportsnet. But right now, we're not sure exactly which teams have been talking to him, but there certainly are a variety that are showing interest and are considering signing him. I mean, he played over 20 minutes per game with the Canucks in a fairly elevated role. He should be able to play second pair minutes for a fair bit of teams around the NHL, maybe third pair in some teams. But either way, for what he can bring and the experience he's gained here in the last few years with Vancouver, he should be able to get a contract with one of these teams. I wouldn't rule out some of the teams that have the space, like New Jersey. We've talked about their left side before, and that they might be looking to Jake Gardiner. And some of these teams, like the Devils or others, might kind of look to Ben Hutton as a cheaper alternative. Now, I realize they're not exactly the same type of defenseman, but they're both a left shot. And obviously Gardner's a little bit different, more offensive, but still Hutton can be a cheaper alternative to play a smaller role if they decide to go that route instead, more of a depth move than trying to bolster with a top pair offensive defenseman like Gardner can provide. So it certainly will be interesting to see where guys like Gardner and Hutton end up, but according to Sportsnet, Hutton is garnering a lot of interest and should have a contract here sometime in the near future. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the Florida Panthers as well, and many feel that they likely were going to be making some kind of a cost-cutting move after signing a lot of players in free agency, and obviously including one of the guys we're going to talk about here as well momentarily, Sergei Bobrovsky, to a big $10 million contract. They're not up against the cap too badly. They do have a little bit of space, and for the most part, majority of their contracts are looked after this offseason, so they don't really have to do anything right now, but many felt like somebody like a Mike Hoffman, who's a pending unrestricted free agent, very well could be traded with the other moves they've made. You know, they do have a very deep forward group. They likely want to work in a couple of their younger forwards to have more of a full-time role this year, and then maybe a veteran like Hoffman might be the guy to go. They might prove difficult to keep him beyond the season anyway, so rather than lose him as a free agent next year, then he very well could end up being traded before the season starts. But according to The Athletic's George Richards, who had a mailbag segment discussing a lot of things about the Panthers recently here, he kind of dismissed that notion where he doesn't feel like the Florida Panthers are going to end up trading him. He sees him starting the year in Florida, going to camp, and likely sticking with the team for most of the season. Of course, if things don't go well in Florida and it's looking like they're going to miss the playoffs again, then I could certainly see him being a trade deadline target for many teams because he'd be a pure rental at that point. But based on all the moves that the Panthers have made, I would hope for their sake that they're not in that predicament here yet again. Obviously, they've made some adjustments in goal, a lot of adjustments to the forward group and defense. Like, overall, this should be a much better team. Plus, I feel like they underachieved last year as well. So when you put it all together, the Florida Panthers should stand a much better chance at getting into the playoffs, although it might have to be a wild card situation because they have some tough competition in their division, and the Metro teams are really strong as well. So they very well could possibly get 5 into the playoffs again, depending on where everybody finishes, of course. But it could be a dogfight for Florida, even with the moves they've made. It's certainly not going to be any easy task. But according to George Richards, he feels like Hoffman likely stays, and they very well might not be making any cost-cutting measures here, at least not at this time. Now, talking about Sergei Bobrovsky's exit here from the Columbus Blue Jackets, we came across some very interesting information on Twitter, some quotes from Bobrovsky here, so I'll put that up on the screen and hear what he had to say. Bobrovsky says, "There was no chance I'd sign an extension with CBJ. I felt I needed another scenery, and it's not just because of tensions with the Jackets that started after the playoffs loss to the Caps." So obviously he's referring to the season before when they got off to a great start in the series, won the first couple of games, but ultimately the Caps came back, won the series, and went on to win the Stanley Cup. He goes on to say, "I was suspended by the team. There were some conflicts in the team, a lot of meetings, and some just because of me. I didn't feel comfortable. Still, the Jackets tried and tried to extend me all season long." So obviously that goes to show that many of us that felt like early on when the preseason first got underway in training camp that he was very well done there, proved to be right. After training camp opened in that first interview he did, asking about his future and the fact that he was a pending unrestricted free agent, many of us felt that his time in Columbus was basically done. Just his remarks in saying he wouldn't discuss it, and that Columbus was aware of his wishes, and that he kind of knew what he wanted but wasn't going to speak about it publicly. Certainly didn't give anybody a good feeling that he would be extending his stay with the Blue Jackets organization, which obviously came to be as he's now signed with the Florida Panthers, and then he ended up getting suspended over some sort of incident that happened off the ice or something. I'm not sure exactly what the issue was. They never really talked about it a whole lot, but he ended up missing one game. And it just looked as though it kind of snowballed from there, and it looked abundantly clear that Bobrovsky and Panarin both, who really had very similar approaches to handling the media and their comments and whatnot, was all but gone from the get-go. And obviously, unfortunately for the Jackets and their fans, that turned out to be accurate here, but just goes to show that he really had no intention of staying in Columbus, and that he was all but gone even when he entered training camps. Now, for the Florida Panthers case, obviously they've given him a $10 million contract, and this just goes to show that he was part of the problem and obviously doing some stuff to get himself suspended. Was not happy, had tension with the team. So let's just hope for the Panthers' sake that he stays happy and doesn't feel like he needs a change of scenery, like he said in these quotes here, and that they don't have this massive contract and that's not going to work out, because that would be a major failure for the Florida Panthers. For me, this doesn't give a great impression of Bobrovsky. It's hard to say if he's not really much of a team guy or what he's like in the locker room, but either way, it just really kind of cements the fact of what many of us thought here early in the season. So, of course, as always, let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section. Are the Winnipeg Jets going to end up trading one of their RFAs? Or do you think with the space they have, they can get Laine and Connor under contract and maybe make some different moves, maybe like a Matthew Perreault? Where do you see guys like Jake Gardiner and Ben Hutton ended up? And what are your thoughts on the Bobrovsky comments? I mean, obviously, this should not come as a big surprise to some, but found it very interesting and like to hear what you think as well. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on the notifications so you don't miss any future content. We'll cover all the breaking news from around the NHL and all 31 teams. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.